Hello. Good morning, everybody, all you movers out there. This is another edition of Move Monday, October 31st, the very last day in October for now. And Halloween. Happy Halloween. Woo. We had some fun costumes at the office. We had two Luigis, no Mario, and I dressed up as a fork because hard forks are scary. Yeah, happy week. As we are waiting for people to fill in here, I'd like to remind everyone that we are hiring here at Aptos Labs across a very wide variety of roles. AptosLabs.com/careers is the best place to go to find what roles are available. There's a lot up on there. And who knows, even next week, you could be sitting here with us, laughing away. Someone said that they'd get me to 2,000 followers on Twitter this week. And I promised them that if they did, there would be jokes. They did not, so I'm sorry. No jokes. Kidding. But the jokes will be bad though. I can guarantee that. Cool.
You're falling a bit short there on the 2000. I think that's a huge under delivery there at 1,200. Not even 1,200 yet.
I know.
Can we get 2 followers for Max in this?
I'm 178 now. Oh, went up by 3. Cool.
Yeah.
I think I have realized I'm just bad at Twitter. I don't know what to say, but there are some really cool projects out there. This week we saw utility projects coming in for Aptomango holder getting discount on Tsunami Finance. That was really cool. Pontum announced that they are doing a airdrop to everyone who's used Liquid Swap in the past, since mainnet launch. I was about to say a few months, but we only launched a few weeks ago. Time really flies. Yeah. Very exciting. A new NFT and you get 1 APT. So amazing. Wow.
I need to do more ecosystem project testing.
I know. I literally this week I was like, I should play Liquid Swap. I missed out.
But get there, Sherry?
Liquid Swap. Yeah. I mean, I did a whole bunch of stuff.
So you're gonna get an NFT
Maybe.
and one APT. Congratulations.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Not in this economy. The M&M throwback hair. Thank you so much. That's actually really good. I like that one a lot. Yeah, as you can tell, we didn't have our video on last time. A bunch of us dyed our hair. I had pink hair for a week. The dye washed out. So now I am indeed throwback M&M. I think that's the best comparison because it's not quite as white as Guy Fieri. Cool. I'll take it. Love M&M. Today with us, we have Ranger from Argo and Yeehaw from Argo, who are going to be talking about their awesome project. And sorry, this chat. I throw shade from under the same tree. I love it. We'll be talking about Argo, what they're doing, how they're building, and we'll be taking your questions. So if you have any questions, the general chat in Discord is a great place to put them. Or additionally, inside of the Twitch chat, we will look in both places and we'll also answer some of the questions from Typeform if we get around to it. So yeah, before we get started, I guess we can go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Max. I'm an engineer here on the ecosystem team.
I'm Sherry, production engineer.
David, I don't know what my identity is anymore, but I'm having a lot of fun.
Fair enough.
Maybe I could be, well, you're actually the NFT collector extraordinaire, so I don't even have that title. Wow.
I just buy things I like. I'm very close to getting a one-of-one out of Mingo. You may have him within a day or I may lose it. We'll see. It's just going to come down a little bit on the price. Cool.
And we have Wolfgang also on VC with us.
Yes.
And
yes, we do. One of, the illustrious Wolfgang. And also from Argo, we have, I guess I'll let you to introduce yourselves.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Yeehaw. I almost said my real name. Ha! This is Yeehaw from Argo. We're working on a stablecoin lending protocol. Just launched on mainnet a couple weeks ago. It's been super fun so far. I'll let Ranger introduce himself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Ranger. I don't know if Yihad mentioned this, but he handles all the business BD side of things at Argo, and I'm mainly responsible for all the tech side stuff. So eventually happy to answer like all sorts of questions related to the tech, the design, and kind of like a lot of things that we've thought about. So yeah, excited to be on here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. So, what is Argo? Yes, this is a great chance to shill Argo.
So Argo is a CDP lending protocol in which users deposit various crypto assets as collateral in order to mint and borrow a synthetic stablecoin called USDA, which is named after the beef because it's really high grade. It's a really high grade stablecoin. And
So can you tell us what a CDP is?
A stablecoin is a coin that aims to be closely correlated, nearly one-to-one correlated with some underlying asset. So in this case, our stablecoin USDA is tracking the US dollar. So ideally, price of USDA on the open market should be $1, or in this case, on the blockchain, 1 USDC, since that's like the most commonly used stablecoin. And so, yeah.
Could you also define the term CBDC? I think you used that.
Did I?
Or you said something. What was the acronym that they used?
Oh, CDP. CDP.
Yeah,
Sorry,
CDP.
CDP. Collateralized debt position. Yeah. So you have, some kind of asset like some Bitcoin, some ETH, some maybe you got that juicy 150 APT airdrop, and you don't know what to do with it. You think APT will go to the moon, so to say. You don't want to sell your APT, but you want to access its value. And so what you could do is basically lock that APT in a CDP, such as Argo, and you could generate USDA and borrow it against your APT. And what that means is your APT is the collateral for the stablecoin. And the goal of the stablecoin is to always be over collateralized. So there'll be some margin called the collateral ratio, basically like the collateral divided by the amount of stablecoin you're borrowing. And that's the maximum amount you can borrow. And if that ratio drops below a certain number, then there are liquidator bots that can go and seize your collateral and sell it back to USDA and repay that back to the protocol. So that ensures that all of the outstanding USDA is always fully collateralized, is always over collateralized. And then of course, once you do this, once you take your juicy 150 APT and print some USDA, you can use this USDA just like any other stablecoin. You could swap it to USDC and cash it out to your bank account. You could buy more APT so you can leverage long if you're a super bull. You could try to go delta neutral by taking that stable coin and putting it on a lending protocol and then borrowing APT and selling that APT so that you're, well, it wouldn't exactly be delta neutral, but you'd have some downside protection. Just a lot of different you could, of course you could LP with it by depositing in some DEX or some AMMs. So there's a lot of things you can do with that. And then I guess the other thing I would say is the precedent for this, or the similar product to this is, of course, MakerDAO on Ethereum, the ones who piloted the CDP model. So yeah, that's basically an overview of Argo.
Cool. You also mentioned LP. What is LP?
So liquidity provisioning or liquidity providing. So of course DEXs, since we're still kind of in the early days of Aptos, a lot of DEXs could use some liquidity. The more liquidity there is, there's less slippage for people to swap in and out of stuff. So say that you have some USDA and you also have some USDC laying around, you could go to one of the many DEXs on Aptos and deposit both of those coins into a pool on those dexes so that other users can swap between USDC and USDA. And of course, you would be earning swap fees on that.
Sweet. How much, I guess, are the fees generally across here? Like, how much are you seeing people maybe earning or using?
So I think it depends on like what the volume is going in and out of the stablecoin. I think I saw yesterday on Anime Swap there was like over 50% APY on USDA, USDC. Not financial advice, by the way. I feel like I'm gonna have to say that after I say anything, but yeah, and I believe that's on a 0.3% swap fee. Regarding Argo fees, right now the borrow interest rate on USDA is only 1% right now, so we're cheaper than the Federal Reserve right now. Not financial advice, by the way.
That's crazy. That's really, really cool. Someone in Twitch chat is asking if they wanted to see a white paper for Argo, where could they find that?
So we don't have we have an internal white paper, but it kind of contains like a lot of confidential stuff, so we haven't published it. But regarding like public facing stuff, the best place to go would be docs.argo.fi. And everything, all the information about Argo, about the architecture, general facts, a little bit about the team, all that stuff should be there. That is a living document. It's constantly getting updated as we ship new stuff.
By the way, just to give you some of the own advice that we've taken ourselves, usually we never say that we don't have something. We always just say it's coming soon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my bad. Soon TM, sometime in the next 6 quarters. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Don't even make the time estimates. We just say very soon.
Very soon. Or you gotta say one season or something like that, like fall 2022.
Cool. Actually, in terms of auditing, there was actually a question here about auditing, and I'm curious, now that you've developed on top of Aptos and within Move, can you actually tell us a little bit about how you perceive the security elements and why people should trust Argo as a safe stablecoin?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. So our audit was completed by AutoSec last week, and our audit report can be found in our docs page. And let's see, in terms of building on Aptos, like writing Move, I think it's been a really good experience so far. So my background, at least for over the past year, is I've actually been building in like multiple EVM chains and Solana. So that's kind of the context in the background here that I'll use to describe what it's been like building on Move. So I think Solidity feels a lot like the JavaScript of smart contract languages. It's like really easy to pick up, but like there's so many ways that you can shoot yourself in the foot. Like you don't get any overflow checks, and you don't get like these signer objects that you get in Move. And there's just like a lot of ways to kind of forget something, and then like, yeah, all it takes is like one forget something for something bad to happen. And then the other aspect of Solidity too is it doesn't really lend itself to be like parallelized once it's compiled and running in a VM. So I guess that kind of brings me to Solana a bit, where it does lend itself to parallelizable transactions and running on a highly parallelizable VM. But writing in Solana feels a lot like writing smart contracts in like C++, C, or like a really low level language. And again, like I think like for a lot of engineers, we know that like there's a reason we have high level languages. It's because like there's so many ways to screw up when you're working with a low level language. So I think, and that's also with Anchor too. Like I think Anchor is great, but I still think it's very challenging for a lot of devs to like write good code. So I think that like brings me to Move, where where like it's really simple, and it doesn't feel like, to me, it's a like general purpose programming language. It feels a lot more like this was built specifically to write smart contracts and to manage resources properly. So Move makes it possible to still have these parallelizable transactions, but it's like as easy as Solidity, and it comes with like a lot more of these like good defaults, like no overflows, right? Like that should kind of be obvious when you're working with like financial numbers. And I think like some interesting paradigms I've seen too are like capabilities and giving capability resources. That's like not something I've seen in any other smart contract programming language. So yeah, I don't want to go into way too much detail, but I think it's like it's really good to have a language like Move to be writing smart contracts. And I think like you can kind of tell, not by just me saying that, but by seeing how many teams were willing to build on Aptos before it even went on mainnet.
Yeah, no, that's been phenomenal. There's one area actually I want to show a little bit within the security model that you didn't bring up, and maybe you're not super familiar with it, so apologies if I catch you off guard. But one of the things that I think is really cool about Move, and I'm curious if you've taken advantage of it, is the verifiability of what you're executing on chain is something that you can actually audit yourself. And I don't know if you've actually done this if you've done EVM programming or C-level Solana programming, but what's your familiarity with that side on that side as well on the Move side?
Can you elaborate what you mean by verifiability?
Yeah, so the actual code itself, the bytecode itself, can easily be decompiled back into the source code as one example. And then the other one that's actually even more interesting is that by default, we actually publish the source code on chain when you're using the CLI tooling, so that somebody can easily go and verify that the code that they're executing is actually the code that they can download from the chain in a very easy fashion. Whereas I think in EVM world, you have to go and do some interesting awkward dance with third-party indexers.
Yeah, so I think like contract verification is really important. So from like EVM, I think they actually do an all right job of this. Like if I go on Etherscan, oftentimes for like the biggest projects, their code is verified, and like basically they compile the program, check the bytecodes look the same, and then there's like a green check mark. And I think that makes sense. But yeah, it's like a little cumbersome, but I guess they eventually got to it. It's really nice that for Move, you don't have like 10 different versions of the compiler, and it's not like hard to like compile it down and like check that like the code that's on chain is actually like the pre-image of like the compilation. And I guess on Solana, it's pretty terrible in my opinion. Like there's no good way to check like what you're running. And with Anchor framework, with Rust, like it just makes like the verification process probably like a lot more challenging. So like I don't think that they won't eventually get to it, but I think it's like a much harder problem than when you have something like Move that's like really easy to compile. I think that's nice. The only thing that I would knock on though is, but I think this would get better, is like getting the Move CLI to be much more portable. I feel like right now you need a lot of like dependencies to run that binary, but like if it can be like really easily shipped, then I think that can be really helpful too, to like just like run verification, run the Move compilation, whatever, without like that many outside dependencies.
So on that note, I'm kind of curious, have you seen the binary download for the CLI, or is that still cumbersome?
Oh, I guess, yeah, I have seen it. I remember when I was using it, like there might have been some things I needed in my local depths, like SSL, but I might just be like remembering things, or like I might be like have like not remember things exactly. But yeah, like the CLI being exported through GitHub is already quite good. That's for sure.
No, don't get me wrong. I think the building of it is somewhat complicated. in the fact that it also ships with the entire Aptos node and a whole bunch of other stuff to go with it. So it ends up being kind of like a kitchen sink of sorts, which can be not that great for folks that want to, quickly add a new feature and compile from source. But that, hopefully, if there are any issues on the pre-built version, we would love to get those called out, and so we can continue to improve the DevX on that space, because yeah, we don't want people spending hours to just build their first Move app.
For sure. Yeah, the CLI is quite good. Yeah, like I use that one all the time. I literally just download it and just like store it in a bin folder somewhere.
Oh, solid. So kind of going back to the stablecoin, we went way on the Move side, well, maybe stablecoin a little bit. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is how what's your current integration? How many DEXs are you involved with, and have you actually begun conversations with centralized exchanges?
Yeah, so right now I'm pretty sure USDA is on every mainnet DEX right now, if I'm not mistaken. So that includes like Aux, Liquid Swap, there's Anime Swap. I know about I think Laminar just launched their kind of like partnership with Liquid Swap a couple days ago. So, and they're using the same pools. So technically we're also on those Laminar pools as well. In terms of centralized exchanges, I don't really think right now that's not like it's not really a priority for us, because I think like the vast majority of people who are using this are going to be primarily interested in using it through DeFi and farming the various opportunities that exist. So
I wouldn't discount that it could eventually be on a centralized exchange, but I like right now it's a bit iffy on like the US legal side, like just like listing tokens in general. So we need to figure those like details out before we do it. But I wouldn't say it's out of the question that eventually USDA could show up on a centralized exchange, similar to how DAI is already on like Coinbase, for instance.
Very cool, very cool. So one thing, just to poke around that one a little bit, because we've started to get a little bit of feedback. I'm kind of curious, when you're working with a DEX and you don't already have an existing coin tape registered on your account, how does the integration work for most DEXs so that you can actually convert from one coin to another?
So I would have to like look at the underlying DEX, but like if I was going to build it myself, I would basically write a script on top of the core DEX code and just check if the coin is registered by that signer that's calling in. And if it's not, to just register the coin right there. So that's how I would do it for a user who's swapping, but has not yet registered the destination coin yet.
Got it. But I guess that's not a great question. I think the better question is, how do you folks actually do it? When I want to swap Aptos for USDA, what is the process you folks do for first time purchasers?
So we would swapping like Aptos to USDA or vice versa, we would probably recommend using an aggregator. Like right now, I think Hippo.space is the best one.
Okay.
So, yeah, like our platform doesn't like right now we don't facilitate like the swaps. All it is depositing apt and borrowing against it. So you're not running any swaps on the Argo project. You would have to do that externally today. In the future, we may make it like, we might integrate like Hippo swap potentially like on our site to do something like that. But the core primitive that we've built is not swap. The core primitive that we've built is basically borrow lend for USDA.
I see. So can you actually walk me through that one layer deep? Like I'm a new user, I want to get USDA. What process do I actually go through?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there's kind of two user stories for this. One of the user stories is you want a stable coin, but you don't want to go through all the trouble of going through like this collateralization and borrowing. And you also don't want to deal with like a borrow interest rate. So what you would do is you would I would say just go on HippoSwap, and HippoSwap looks at all the exchanges that are on chain, Aux, liquid swap, anime swap, and finds you the best price to swap from your app to USDA to get you USDA. And so that swap would basically allow you to take your app to convert it into USDA, and then you could just hold it or do whatever else you want with it. The second user story for getting USDA is to actually just use Argo to do it. And so if you have apt, you would deposit, let's say, $100 of apt into Argo, and then you could then just borrow $50 of USDA. And again, you got USDA this time, but the upside is you didn't have to sell your apt for it. But kind of one of the trade-offs is now you have to pay a borrow interest rate. So it's like, I think it depends on like who the user is, what they're trying to do. But those are the two main ways to convert yourself from apt, or starting from apt and getting yourself into USDA.
So can we actually dig a little deeper? How are you guys managing the loans, specifically from a technical perspective? Like what data structures are you using? And then also on the loan side, how are you handling the payments?
Yes. So there's three core data structures that we use in our program. One of them is called the laboratory, and the laboratory manages the USDA supply. And so that's like the global thing. And then underneath it, if we think of it as like a tree, the children of the laboratory are what we call engines. And each engine is a different collateral type. So we would have one apt engine, we would have one ETH engine, etc. And then under each engine are vaults. And each signer can open up to one vault per engine. And so there are basically these vaults that are under each engine, and each user maintains a vault that's stored in their account, right? And for liquidations to happen, there needs to be a registry of all the vaults that have been created. And we maintain that using events. So in Move, in the Aptos framework, there's events. And so we emit an event every single time a vault is created. And that's also how we fetch all the vaults that have been created. And it's nice to use events too, because like it's an append-only data structure, and that's exactly what we need. Like nobody's going to be deleting any vaults. So we can just keep a list of vaults that every user has created under every engine. And so now I'll kind of get into like what the liquidator tries to do. So a liquidator is basically a program that reads what's on chain on the Aptos blockchain by basically iterating through all these vaults, right? And over all these vaults, it calculates everybody's collateral ratio to see how healthy their vaults are. And in the instance, there's a vault that's unhealthy, where they have more debt than collateral than compared to the maintenance collateral ratio. The vault can be marked. And then after a mark period, the collateral undergoes a reverse Dutch auction, where the price of the collateral is decreasing at a linear rate. And anybody, it's completely permissionless, can go in and seize the collateral at that price in time and basically take that collateral and repay the user's loan and basically pay for that collateral using USDA to bring the user's vault health back up. And I guess like a neat thing about this is that liquidation process supports flash loans. So we use the hot potato method of giving a resource to a liquidator, and the liquidator must return that resource with the USDA repayment. So what's nice about this is liquidators now don't need any capital besides paying for gas to liquidate vaults. And I think that's really important to decrease the barrier of entry for liquidation as much as possible. And we have a running liquidator. We have to have a running liquidator right now. But right now it's on Docker. I can like share an image later. I think like we've shared it on Discord, but very soon we're going to open source it so that way anybody can run these liquidators to monitor the health of the Argo protocol.
That's really neat.
So there's a lot to digest there. The first one I want to go through is lavatory. The only time I've ever seen a lavatory is on an airplane. So please explain to me the naming.
Oh, the laboratory? Like Dexter's laboratory?
My gosh, the whole time I'm thinking about lavatory, I'm like, you guys have a lot of respect for your protocol.
Yeah, it stores all the shit.
That would be the meme version of our protocol. If you ever see that, you'll know it's our marks.
Well, I guess for April 1st, you can relabel everything.
Oh, yeah. No, it's the laboratory. I think we were going for like names that were memorable that kind of could work, but like I don't know. It's always hard to pick names. I think every engineer will agree with that.
I just never look back, just make arbitrary naming choices and then die on that hill, but to each their own. So continuing on, I think the other thing that's kind of interesting there is kind of this flash loan service. And I guess the one concern that I have, and concern is probably too strong a word, but if you bring this public, open source, and multiple entities are actually running through this, how do you what's the risk of collisions and the bad UX on that aspect? Because I imagine, as you kind of said, the worst kind of case scenario is both parties pay for the same gas, but only one party actually gets the collateral, the value out of the effort. Or maybe you can walk me through that a little bit.
Sure. So I guess this is getting a little bit into like MEV territory a little bit.
Yeah.
But basically, I think this is like the case everywhere, and it has to happen like this. Basically, two liquidators are going to see this is the optimal price to execute at, and both of them submit transactions. One of them, if it brings the user's vault health back up, would basically prevent the other transaction from going through. So it always is a race. It always will be a race among these liquidators to try to get that first transaction through. And yeah, the person who didn't get their transaction through, it's all right because there's atomicity in these transactions, and that guy's transaction is just going to roll back, and they're just going to pay the partial gas that went up to that point. But yeah, I think this is like a design that there's really no alternative besides building it this way.
But I think the interesting thing there is it's a choice on when you actually want to do the operation. Like there's not an optimal point of time. It's mostly at which point does the entity value it sufficiently.
Yes, but I would say there's an optimal to that, right? Because there is an optimal price, and it also depends, I guess, like, are people willing to do this while losing money? I would say probably not. Most people are going to try to make a profit from these transactions, right? And so there is an optimization problem there that everybody will eventually land on pretty similar, like a pretty similar optimization problem. The only one that like is a bit special is like maybe somebody with like an OTC desk might have a better execution on some of the tokens, or somebody is willing to take on the risk of holding apt after seizing the collateral. So those would be some considerations that might give certain liquidators edges over other liquidators besides just the technical execution.
That makes sense. Just want to go through a few questions that we actually got from the community. The first one, I know the answer to this one. I don't know if we made it exceedingly clear, but where is Argo currently available? Testnet, mainnet, devnet, like where are you folks actually running?
We're on mainnet right now. Testnet and devnet is deprecated, but mainnet, yeah, argo.fi.
Awesome. And you were actually there on day one, from what I understand.
Yes, that was very stressful.
We were there on day one. We were also there before with a working testnet. We will spin testnet back up pretty soon, but right now, like, all of our efforts have been concentrated on stabilizing on mainnet. But yeah, eventually we'll have a testnet because I know it's very valuable to other projects who are figuring out how to integrate. They may not want to do a test in production. They'll probably want to get some USDA, run their integration on testnet first. So that's definitely in the works.
So I'm going to ask somewhat of a loaded question, just because I see several of these inside of the various the questions that we have here, and hopefully, I think you're probably well prepared for this one. But USDT took down an entire blockchain. I'm kind of curious. Can you elaborate on how USDA won't fall down that same pathway?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you mean UST, not USDT.
Yes, indeed,
Yeah.
I do. I was just reading from the question. My bad.
If USDT goes
All
down.
Yeah, I don't know about UST, but yeah, so like UST had a different mechanism for backing its stablecoin. Basically, it was two tokens at the beginning. It was Luna and UST. And kind of the euphoria of that kind of setup is that as more people want UST, people have to burn Luna. And it at first kind of looks collateralized, right? Like every UST is backed by Luna, but then like, I guess like people keep minting UST, people keep burning Luna, and then the Luna price starts skyrocketing because there's less of it. There's a massive UST supply, but like I guess there's a lot of euphoria in that direction. But like, what happens when Luna price starts falling? And what happens when people start pulling liquidity out for Luna? And what happens like if like you can't get like good slippage on selling Luna? And suddenly like what seems theoretically like you might be over collateralized, or like well collateralized, you actually have like far less collateral than you can support for UST if there's like a major like dumping event, and you're going to have a hard time holding the peg. And then when people are fudded about the stablecoin, they're just going to keep selling, and it's like a death spiral. So like just as good as it went up, it's just as bad going down, if not worse sometimes. So like I guess there's a few things that like I would highlight as key differentiators from what we're doing compared to what that is. And the first is that we are multi-collateral based. And so the importance of that is like if Luna starts losing its value, then it's over, right? But for us, we're backing USDA by multiple collateral types, including USDC and USDT. So even when like Apt token might go down a bit, you have the other tokens kind of holding the peg afloat or holding the collateral afloat. And even if all of crypto macro kind of goes down, we still have USDT, USDC as kind of like the floor and backstop for that kind of downturn. So there's a decent amount of risk management here. But yeah, I think a key advantage is to have multiple collateral types, not just one. And I think Terra actually realized this later on by launching its LFG, but I think by then it was far too late. And then the other is that we're not doing a buy, and we're not doing like a burn and mint redemption mechanism. And I think like that was what made like Luna blow up like crazy and what people would call it a Ponzi. Yeah, that's not something that we're doing here. For what we're doing here, every collateral is locked in and must be there, so that way liquidators can go in and seize collateral as things start looking bad. And we also have like fixed collateral ratios, fixed fixed collateral ratios. And what that's good for is like, we know when liquidators go in, we know when like the system is going to like try to bring its health back up. So we have a lot more predictability, and we have a lot more, I guess, determinism compared to like a lot of different things that could go wrong in like UST, where if like Luna price changes significantly, like it's pretty undefined behavior.
That's really good to hear. Hopefully that answers the questions for those folks out there. Let me see if I can find some other good questions in here.
So there's another question of at the time of liquidation. So you mentioned that. So one of the questions is it full or partial liquidation? And also from the liquidation, where do the proceeds go?
Yes, that's a great question. So one thing that we've kind of like talked about and thought about a lot internally within Argo is liquidations. And there's actually, I think, like two ways to do this. There's like two ends of the spectrum here. One is over liquidate the user, bring the health up as much as possible. But as a result, the users who have deposited may lose more money than they had to. And then on the other side of things is liquidate the user just enough that like they aren't losing that much money in the process, but your protocol is still healthy. And so I think we actually want to basically pick good parameters so that way we can like be on the latter side of that spectrum where we try not to over liquidate users. And basically that's also why we have like a Dutch auction. We want the price of the collateral to be sold at what the market thinks is the optimal price. And we also support partial liquidations where in the event there's like a massive vault, right? We don't want that vault to like tank the price across all the exchanges. We want it to be possible to like slowly liquidate that vault and have arbitrageurs kind of balance out the prices across multiple exchanges, including centralized exchanges. And then in terms of a liquidation tax, we have to implement a liquidation tax because without it, you would have grinding attacks where users liquidate their own vault to seize their collateral at a cheaper price, right? We have to prevent users from being able to do that. So we have a 10% tax right now on liquidations that gets basically sent to the DAO. And right now we have no plans of like removing that money from the DAO. But ideally, we want to just not have liquidations in general. Like we want users to have like healthy vaults. So that's our goal. Like if we can have no liquidations, that would be ideal. But like I mean, it's obviously there because sometimes things just don't go as planned. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. Thank you for the answer. What, I guess kind of, this may be an awful question, but what kind of situations would trigger basically the fees not necessarily being enough? Like, is it basically a 10% buffer on fees for, I've never actually considered users self-liquidating. I think that's a really funny, interesting attack. What kind of situation would cause that the 10% to potentially not be enough?
Yeah. So the problem with like users liquidating themselves is an opportunity to basically like, if they borrowed a certain amount of USDA against like, so they borrow like $1 of USDA against like $2 of collateral, then ideally they should only get their $2 of collateral back if they pay back $1 of USDA. But if they manage to liquidate themselves at a price that's lower than that, then suddenly they may be able to like pay back $1 USDA and get back more than like $2 of their collateral, something like that. And so that's kind of what we'd have to be wary about. 10%, I would say, is kind of arbitrary. We were just looking at like parameterization across other DeFi protocols, and that was like roughly what other people had picked. I think like this is much more of a decision that needs to be based off data, but like we barely had any liquidations in the past few days because we picked extremely conservative collateral ratios. So I think as we go on, we're going to collect more data and we're going to make informed decisions about like what is the best liquidation tax here, because we don't want to be over charging these liquidators, but we also need to make sure that this is still safe enough from potential grinding attacks.
Very cool. Yeah, I love how people will find opportunities to attack anything. So I think it's super fascinating. I'm definitely going to try to read a little bit more about that. later. It's a really neat vector. I hadn't thought of previously, but it makes sense. And I'm glad that you guys have, in fact, not only thought about it, but protected against it. So I have one more question on this from the community. And so they're asking, you mentioned that it's backed by USDC and USDT. They'd like a little bit more detail, I guess. What percentage of it is backed by which coin and how?
So as of right now, just going at, let me just pull up the website real quick to see exactly what's, as of right now, the most utilized asset type is TAPT, like Tortuga Aptos. But we have seen a lot of deposits into USDC as well. So I think right now most of the outstanding USD is backed by Aptos or some kind of other liquid staking derivative. And that does make sense because that seems like the primary use case right now is that, like, I think people are like depositing APT or depositing some liquid staked derivative of APT, and then minting and borrowing USDA and then using their USDA to buy more APT. So they have increased long exposure to APT. And especially so, given that, like, liquid staking derivatives have like I think it's like 7% APR or something like that relative to APT. So I think people are trying to leverage up on their exposure to that 7%.
No, I really.
I guess like the one thing I would add to that is right now we don't have like a what some people name as peg stability module. Like we don't have like a official one, but the USDC, USDT collateral actually serves as like a good buffer for maintaining the peg. So like what I mean by that is if the peg is like too high, if USDA goes above $1, then we can, I think like the toggling the interest rate on the USDC, USDT engines is a much stronger knob than turning the borrow interest rate on other engines, because USDC, USDT can be like pretty easily reasoned about, whereas with apt USDA, people's main purpose for doing that is through leverage. So yeah, that's like another small thing that we've thought about a bit too, is it kind of acts as like a pseudo peg stability module that we can lean on.
Very cool. I just want to say thank you folks for taking the time to come chat with us today. Learning about stablecoins on Aptos has been amazing and extremely rewarding. We're really happy that you decided to be part of the Aptos ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I had a lot of fun.
Oh. Sound like they're Wolfgang, were you saying something? Okay.
I'm
so we have
sorry, was there something?
No, everything's all good. I think we have a few questions that we want to take more openly about just non-stablecoin questions. I think Max has a few of those. You want to read some of those off, Max?
I would love to. So thank you again, as always, Alnoki, who's back in our other office next door, in fact. He has a question about, is there any way to mark helper functions for inlining?
Yeah, so I said I can answer this. Okay, just a second. Okay, all right, here I'm going. Right now, there is no way to inline. We totally understand why you're asking this, because of gas costs. No? But our strategy is should be, the strategy we want to have is that you don't need to inline to make your code more efficient regarding gas. So we will look at anyway whether we can supply or support some inline feature for functions. But at the moment, it's more important for us that you actually don't have any extra cost by calling a function which is inline compared a function which is not inline. No? So because so like adding all this information for gas efficiency and performance typically leads not to better readable code and better understandable code. And we really don't want that you have to pay for if you write right code, correct code, nice code, you shouldn't have to pay for in terms of gas. So we're working on this. Technically, I just want to point out that if you think about the Move security model, inlining is also technically not that easy because you cannot just put one code which accesses resources of a module into some other module. That's what is actually disallowed by the virtual machine for security reasons. So we ensure that the modular encapsulation and the protection of data structures by module boundaries is actually happening. So even if you add inlining, it could be only in a relative restricted way and not generically arbitrary inlining because of the Move safety properties. But as said, so I don't think we will need that moving forward in refining our way how we charge gas.
Amazing. And then the next question is, if we're writing tests, unit tests in Move, and we're looking and we're emitting events, how can we potentially assert or get those events that we're emitting?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and it should be really a bug, an issue, a feature request. So I don't think it's currently possible, and this is really something missing. If you want to test whether your events are emitted, it shouldn't be too hard to do that, but I don't think there is currently a way. You can simulate this somehow by, I don't know, by tracking somewhere else whether you have emitted the event for your test purpose, but it's not ideal. So thanks for bringing this up. This is really a feature request.
So I think there's a couple ways that it's not perfect. And so you're absolutely right, Wolfgang, that we definitely have work to do in the space. But each event is actually stored inside the Move data model. So you should at least, and not the event data, but at least the event sequence number. And so you should be able to read that field and assert that it's been incremented. Now the question is that field actually public or is it private? And if it's private, well then, yeah, we would need to go and make that kind of fix so that people can actually start doing their testing of events.
Currently private, but as you're saying, it's not that hard to implement because the data is there. It's just not exposed in any way. Right. So we just, yeah.
And then I think the other one that you've also been working on, Wolfgang, is this Move end-to-end testing harness that actually allows for cross-Rust Move testing, and in which case you get full access to the entire change set output, including events.
I will say, so there is actually, so this is actually something that we did in our ANS testing. There is a event : counter method that does get the current counter associated with an event handle. So we have a couple of test-only functions to help, it's encapsulation. We have a couple of test-only functions whose sole purpose is literally just to get the counter, and so we assert that, like, depending on what we're doing, either changed by one event or two events or whatnot.
Oh, thank you, Max. I didn't know that. That's actually cool.
No, but agreed. It would be, because I ran into the same problem actually, of hoping that the events are correct, but at least knowing that we emitted something.
Yep.
And it has to match the syntax as defined, so at least you get some level of guarantees. What exactly is in there, maybe messed up your ordering of U64s, and now,
Yeah.
you win some, you lose some, I guess. Anyway, any other questions?
Hello, is anyone around? We are here. And I do hope the audio is coming through.
If there is no other question, I just may want to say something additional about the inlining and the gas, if you guys are interested. So we are totally understanding that you need more tools for developing gas conscious code. And so we have some plans there to pretty soon and fast act on this, to give you tools in hand to do that. For example, during unit tests, to print out what gas actually using where, or some other things which are very exciting we are looking at is like in profiling, in Flame Graph or something, profiling tools you can kind of browse through the gas usage of your code. So this kind of thing is definitely on our agenda, and we take totally important to deliver these tools to the community. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it is 11. We have had a very full Monday today. Thank you so much, Ranger and Yeehaw from Argo. Thank you for joining us again, Wolfgang. I mean, I don't know. Thank you for joining us every time, and I hope you continue to do it. Thank you, David and Sherry.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you. It's just a bunch of thank yous. Aptos.com/careers. If you're hiring, if you're looking for a job, we are hiring. Sorry. And check out argo.fi for a really, really cool product that we talked a lot about today. If you have any questions, we'll catch you next time here in no longer quite so hot Palo Alto.
And we do live here. We live here. We have a bed literally
Yes.
in this office.
We do live here.
We have a bed now?
So it's like, yeah.
Anywhere is a bed if you're tired enough. Have a good week.